Korean War. This was a prolonged war, where the idea of using nuclear weapons was continuously under consideration, and you'll soon understand why. On June 25, 1950, North Korean troops, trained and supplied by the Soviet Union, crossed the border with South Korea. The South was completely unprepared. They had no tanks, only a small air force, and their soldiers were trained mostly for fighting small guerrilla groups, not a full-scale war. Within just 3 days, the capital city of Seoul had fallen, and within 2 months, North Korean forces had almost pushed their enemies into the sea, trapping them inside a shrinking area of land called the Pusan Perimeter. The United Nations, led mainly by the United States, threw everything it could into stopping North Korea. This wasn't just a war between the two Korean states, but one between the United States and its allies on one side, and China and the Soviet Union on the other. In September, the US launched a pretty risky plan, the landing at Incheon. American Marines and South Korean troops stormed the beaches far behind enemy lines, cutting off North Korea's supplies and forcing them to retreat. UN forces then went north, captured Pyongyang, and pushed all the way to the Yalu River, which marked the border with China. For a short moment, it looked like the whole peninsula might be reunited under the South, but then China stepped in. Hundreds of thousands of Chinese soldiers secretly crossed the Yalu River and launched sudden attacks in October. Their arrival completely changed the war, as US and UN forces were pushed back, and by early 1951, Seoul had fallen again, only to be retaken by the UN just weeks later. After this back and forth, the war slowed down and turned into a deadlock, with trenches being built and both sides fighting around the original dividing line. Due to this stall, at one point, US generals, including Douglas MacArthur, suggested using nuclear weapons against North Korea or China. Bombers were even loaded with practice versions of atomic bombs to prepare for such an order. President Truman admitted the option was always under active consideration. But Washington held back, afraid that dropping atomic bombs would bring the Soviet Union directly into the war and turn Korea into the beginning of World War III. China also prepared itself for the possibility of nuclear strikes, but in the end, no bombs were dropped. The world came very close to nuclear war, but both sides stepped back from the edge. The fighting ended with an armistice, with the two Koreas remaining divided and separated by a heavily armed strip of land called the Demilitarized Zone. No peace treaty was ever signed, which means the war is technically still not finished even today.